Edgar Allen Poe's A Tale from Jerusalem, Summary and Analysis. I want to start by saying I'm no great fan of American literature, at least no more a fan than I am of literature in general. I think it's because having lived most of my life in America, it lacks the exoticism I get from other authors. So you might be wondering why I've chosen a topic that I'm already predisposed to not enjoy. You were probably assuming it's because I'm a masochist, but you would be wrong, at least this time. No, the real reason is purely mercenary. YouTube is awash with short story channels, and the most popular ones all seem to be focused on the horror genre, probably due to the countless edgy teens who have the disposable time to devote to sucking up content. So in a pure attempt to garner views, let's take a look at a story from the patron saint of edgy, angsty teens who think their poetry is deep because it's just so brooding, Edgar Allen Poe. Oh, but A Tale from Jerusalem isn't a horror story, but stick around anyway. You might just have your worldview broaden and become a better person. Maybe. If you haven't read the story, don't worry, I'm going to summarize it here, but if you would like to hear it, I've read it on this channel and you can go listen to it. I'll leave a link. You might as well subscribe since you're already clicking around. In A Tale from Jerusalem, Jerusalem is being besieged by the Roman army led by Pompey Magnus, and in negotiation for the city's surrender, Pompey is offered a show of good faith and is willing to sell the Gizbarim a lamb to be used as a sacrifice so the Jews can maintain their ritual calendar while under siege. Abel Shitsam, Buzi ben Levi, and Simeon the Pharisee are the Gizbarim given the task of collecting the lamb from the Romans in exchange for 30 silver shekels, which is hard to say quickly. The Gizbarim, standing atop the tallest tower in Jerusalem, lower the shekels down on a rope to the Romans, but are unable to see what the Romans are up to so far below them. They immediately start to freak out, believing that the Romans are just going to take the money and not keep up their end of the bargain. They panic, believing that they will lose their jobs as priests for letting the Romans trick them, only to find that the Romans give them the signal to pull the rope back up. They find that the rope is very heavy and begin to believe that the Romans have kept their word and given them the fattest lamb they could find, only to have their hopes dashed yet again when the rope gets to the top and they find a pig attached to it. The Gizbarim drop the pig back down on the Romans in a fairly futile insult when you know historically the Romans are taking Jerusalem anyway. There are two things I don't like in this story. The first one is there are a lot of moments where Poe is using references to the ancient world simply to show off, and while it definitely sets the tone for the story, there is a whole paragraph where he just lists names of pagan gods, which is tedious to read and feels like it is just there to show he could name them all. It's like when your nephew wants to prove he knows all the names of Pokemon, and you happen to be the one stuck listening to it because your sister is just happy that it doesn't have to be her for the 5th time today. Poe also uses the word ejaculated several times in this story, and it's not his fault that the common use of the word has fallen away from shouting loudly towards what you do at night alone shortly before crying, but it's still grating. The story does have some good suspense, and I genuinely enjoyed the reveal that after going from tricked by the Romans to not tricked by the Romans, the needle finally lands on definitely tricked by the Romans, which I think is what makes Poe a giant of horror writing. Amateurs use gore to creep you out, but professionals use suspense.